Well guys, this is the first video of 2026, so I just want to wish you all a happy new year. Hope it was a fun celebration for all of you, and I hope that this year is going to be incredible for all of us. And I think when it comes to talking about video games and just some stuff, I think there's going to be a lot more exciting things because the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be full force this year with having the entire year now to talk about stuff that's going to be coming to it, as opposed to only basically like half a year last year as the system came out in June. And I know my last video that I made for the final one of 2025 was about a topic that wasn't really super hype or exciting, as it was about Pokemon DLC and the fact that looking at some of the internal documents and things that got leaked for it, it might not be looking too good for what kind of Pokemon DLC we might be getting moving forward. So if you are interested in that topic, there should be a little eye up in the corner right now. You can definitely click or tap on that to go and watch that video, but I'll also have it in the outro of this video if you want to go and watch it after you're done watching this one. And I know I wanted to talk about that, but I didn't want to have that gloomy topic be like the first video of 2026 and start off the new year like that, so I made that be the final video of 2025, just use that to kind of wrap up the year and leave that in the past. But the first video that I am making right now for 2026 is about a topic that's actually much more exciting and positive, so I definitely want to have this be the first video of 2026 to really kick off the new year. And so what we're going to be talking about is that it looks like one of the dumb problems that was potentially happening behind the scenes in regards to the Nintendo Switch 2 is now resolved, and this could mean some much better things are coming and they could be just around the corner. Now, before the Nintendo Switch 2 came out, and even before the big Nintendo Switch 2 Direct that happened in April, we had a report that came out from a journalist by the name of Tom Henderson, who supposedly had inside information on what Nintendo's strategy was for the games and how they were going to launch the Switch 2. And Tom Henderson is a pretty reputable person. He's had a lot of things that have ended up being true, and a lot of people like to listen to what he says, and this became a pretty big topic that a lot of people were talking about before we had anything else official from Nintendo, and it was definitely some unusual information. So I have one of these articles that came from that, which we can see right here. As it says here, the Nintendo Switch 2 reportedly sets a 3-phase launch plan for 2025 games, and it says right here that Nintendo is lining up a 3-phase strategy for its Nintendo Switch 2 games throughout 2025. First off, the console will launch primarily with first-party games in June. The second phase will kick off sometime in October and November, and at this point third-party studios will begin to deploy games for the console, with developer kits for the Switch expected to be delivered sometime in June. The third and final phase will kick off at some point during the holiday period, with a final round of game launches to round out the year. Now, when this information first came out, a lot of people, including myself, thought that it was a little bit unusual that Nintendo would have some type of strategy like this for the launch of the Switch 2, where it was mainly just going to be focusing on like first-party stuff at the beginning, and then they were going to be having like third-party stuff come later, and really giving dev kits like later down the line, and it just seemed a little bit kind of weird. But even after we had that big Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, there was really kind of just a lot of like first-party stuff that we got to see, with stuff like Kirby Air Riders and Mario Kart World and Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and yeah, we still did get third-party stuff for sure, but it definitely wasn't like the big focus of like that presentation. And even after that, once we had the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, what really started kind of happening was we were getting a lot of game announcements and things that were being announced at like Summer Game Fest and stuff, and people were wondering where was the Switch 2 versions of some of these games, because there's definitely some games that could absolutely work and run on the Switch 2 and easily come to it, but they weren't getting announced. And a lot of times, like a lot of the developers even started saying like, we actually don't have dev kits. Like, we want to make games for the Switch 2, we want to bring some of our old games to the Switch 2, we even want to update some and have like enhancements to them, but we literally can't because we don't have dev kits. And so once we started hearing stuff like that from developers, now it was like, okay, it seems like that strategy is actually true, and that Nintendo isn't giving dev kits right away to a lot of these developers, and they essentially just kind of have to wait their turn until Nintendo's like, okay, now we want to give you one. So it wasn't something that like everybody was able to get right away. Of course, I guess Nintendo was probably maybe thinking like they didn't want to have a lot of dev kits given out, because if they gave them before like any information came out officially from them inside of like that Switch 2 Direct, maybe maybe they were scared that like they were gonna leak some information about like the Switch 2's features and the capabilities and stuff, so Nintendo just wanted to have like much more control over like which developers were getting dev kits and who they trusted and stuff. I don't really know the situation, but even after the Switch 2 released, it seemed like a lot of developers still didn't have dev kits, so that's kind of weird because the system is now out in the open and you're still not giving dev kits, which definitely seemed a little bit unusual. And I guess we'll never really know what Nintendo's internal reasons are for this, whether it was to prevent leaks at the start, but even doing it after the system came out, maybe they were kind of scared that there would be too much content with like having too many updates and too many games and too many things, that it would get like way too oversaturated, and that other companies and like their own games might start to lose sales if there's too many things to choose from and stuff, so they wanted to have maybe more control. But even that, I feel like it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I guess we'll never really know. But the thing to kind of really take away is that it did seem like a lot of developers weren't really getting their dev kits, and Nintendo was kind of going on a case-by-case basis and choosing when to start giving these Switch 2 dev kits for developers to start making stuff for the Switch 2. And well guys, it looks like that this problem might now finally be starting to get resolved, as we've got this post here on the Famaboards forum where it's talking here about how Call of Duty is getting late Switch 2 ports, and apparently the reason for this is because Nintendo was late in providing dev kits. And so we've had a big discussion here that was going on about like people talking about the dev kit situation and third parties and all of that, but it really got interesting here when Nate the Hate had to chime in, as if you guys don't know, Nate the Hate is like one of the most prominent insiders and leakers that we have right now within the entire video game industry, but especially when it comes to Nintendo stuff, as this person has ended up leaking a lot of game announcements that have turned out to be true, when Nintendo Directs are going to happen, and even with the Nintendo Switch 2, he told us exactly when the Nintendo Switch 2 was going to be announced, when it was going to be revealed, and even how the trailer was going to be, and all of that turned out to be completely true. So if there's really one person that I put a little bit more faith into when it comes to like these insiders and leakers, it's gotta be Nate the Hate. And he was talking here on this forum where he said right here, "These types of statements keep happening. A team within a company, like Activision, having dev kit access does not mean that the entire company and every team had access to a dev kit. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3+4 arriving on Switch 2 within the launch window doesn't mean that the team porting Call of Duty or any other ABK game also had dev kit access. In the case of COD, it doesn't mean that they got a dev kit super late either, just late enough that they couldn't get the work done to launch the game sooner. The dev kit delivery situation has largely been resolved." And so it's looking like Nate the Hate now is saying that the dev kit situation has pretty much been resolved, and a lot of the companies that were hoping to get some of their games out for the Nintendo Switch 2 or update some of their existing games with Switch 2 versions can now be able to do that, because there was definitely some games that we were hoping to get Switch 2 versions for and we just never got it, and they even had to release some with like just the Switch 1 version of the game because they literally did not have the dev kits to work on a Switch 2 version for their games. And so it seems like all of these companies now that finally want to bring some of their games to the Switch 2 or update their old games and stuff, they should be able to do that, and that is very exciting for all of us because it means now that we could be in store for a lot of cool announcements for games finally coming now to the Nintendo Switch 2, older games getting updated, and a lot of surprises. And I'm pretty sure you guys know now that we are in that time now for the beginning of the year Nintendo Direct that pretty much always happens around February, so I'm sure next month there is going to be a Nintendo Direct, and then we're probably going to get some pretty nice surprises now when it comes to some of the games that are finally going to be coming to the Nintendo Switch 2. In fact, I don't know if some of you guys know about this, but recent updates that were happening to a pretty major game had their updates data mined and pretty much seemingly confirmed that there is a Switch 2 version of that game which is coming very soon, and the game that I'm talking about is Monster Hunter Wilds. So Monster Hunter got a brand new entry last year, and this entry had a lot of people playing it, and it's a big new entry for the Monster Hunter franchise. And this game came out on like the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox and PC and everything, but obviously it wasn't coming out on the Switch 1 because it's like a next gen version of Monster Hunter, and there was no way that the original Switch was going to be able to run this game. But it's looking like the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be able to get it. And it looks like the code of the game pretty much confirms that there is a Switch 2 version hidden inside of these updates, and so I could definitely see this being like a pretty big announcement that could be inside of the next Nintendo Direct, so I definitely think that that could be one of these things that we could see. But even just other games now, I feel like we could be getting some other surprises when it comes to third-party games and just updates and stuff, so it's definitely some pretty exciting news, and I'm very much looking forward now to seeing what types of games can make their way to the Nintendo Switch 2. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely be sure to click that like button and also subscribe to the channel as well. I'm definitely gonna have some more videos talking about the Nintendo Switch 2, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Comment down below and let me know what you think about this. Are you excited now to see what types of third-party games and other games and updates could be coming to the Nintendo Switch 2? What are you really hoping for? Is there a game that you really want to get on the Nintendo Switch 2 when it comes to third parties? Definitely be sure to comment down below and let me know. But if you don't have anything to say about it, just comment your favorite emoji down below for some engagement. I would really appreciate it. Go follow me on Twitter at @Aero so you can be featured in videos, and also join my Discord server as well. We've got a bunch of people in there who are always talking about Pokemon and Smash Bros and Nintendo, so definitely be sure to join that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching.